Lecture number 4 is titled Metaphysics and Spirituality. So, first half, we're still dealing with individual aspects of our faith and our spirituality and our beliefs. I want to give you some rationale for why this is an important lecture, why this is necessary in the entire course, and how it helps us move from the individual perspective to the group perspective. So why is it that we take time to talk about this and study it in the way that we do? The first reason is that not all of our patients are Baptist. You're probably sitting out there thinking to yourself, well, duh, that's like a no-brainer. However, because we are Baptist Health, there are two groups of people that will come to our facilities because they are Baptist. And I want you to be aware of who those people are. The first group is really important because they are people who have a financial gain in coming to a Baptist facility. So the history of Baptist Health comes out of the mission and purpose of the Arkansas Baptist State Convention, which is an association of Southern Baptist churches throughout the state of Arkansas. There are close to 1,000 churches all over Arkansas that affiliate and associate with the Arkansas Baptist State Convention. And way back in 1920, so almost 100 years ago, they decided one of the ways that they could fulfill their mission to share the gospel with those who were in need was to do it through the provision of health care. So they purchased the Battle Creek Sanatorium in downtown Little Rock and opened up a hospital. And I believe the first name was Arkansas Baptist Hospital. With it was a nursing program. So the very first nursing school that associated with Baptist Health came with the hospital when we were first purchased. And there were 5 nursing students, and they graduated in 1921. Those are significant historical dates for us, and we kind of tout that quite a bit. If you've ever walked down the hallway and seen all those pictures, you can see the first class of graduating nursing students back in 1921. We have a leadership training that we do every year that's called 1921 Leadership Lecture Series. That's to signify the first graduating class. There has been a school associated with Baptist Health from the very beginning. So as long as Baptist Health has been in existence in whatever name it was under, there have been health education programs, nursing, practical nursing, and then a variety of allied health schools. So because of that connection to the Arkansas Baptist State Convention, we, for the first 50 or so years of our existence, worked out of the state convention's budget and personnel and their organization. We were a part of the state convention for the first 50 or so years. They selected our personnel. We abided by their policies and practices, and all the budget, all the money went through the state convention. In the mid-60s, the state Baptist Health, whatever the name was at the time, I think it was Baptist Medical Center or Baptist Medical something. In the mid-60s, they determined to pull away from the state convention and establish themselves as a non-profit entity. So we separated from the state convention and became our own entity. However, we remained friendly with the state convention because we had deep historical roots and ties with Arkansas Southern Baptist. And those ties still continue today because Baptist Health provides a pretty sizable discount to any ordained Southern Baptist minister. So there are men and women, their families from all over the state of Arkansas that will come to Little Rock or go to a Baptist facility that's near them because they were going to get a discount on their services. If they can have an elective surgery, if they can plan it, if it's not an emergency situation and they can get here, they will, because it is in their financial best interest. And healthcare is no longer you just go to the nearest hospital. We talked about that already, I think, in here. You know, there's that consumer element to it. So you will get patients, if you choose to work for a Baptist facility after you graduate, you will get patients that will come and say, I'm a Southern Baptist minister, I just want to make sure I get my discount. Because they're told that whenever they come on board as a pastor or a church leader within the state convention, that's part of the orientation they receive. They know that they get that if they come to one of our facilities. The second group is usually, right now, a older class of people. And this group of people is diminishing, but they still exist. And that is the people who have grown up Baptist all their life. They go to a Baptist church, and they see a hospital that says Baptist on it, and they think, if it says Baptist, it's good enough for me. Because I'm Baptist, and it's Baptist, so we must agree and believe on the same things. So there are still people that will come to Baptist Health just because they associate themselves as Baptist, and we're Baptist. We hope that after they come, they will return because we give them excellent care. And we provide for them, and they don't have any issues or problems. But that group of people still exists, even though it's getting smaller, and you will have those patients as well that say, yeah, I'm here because I believe in what Baptists believe in. And that's important to me. All right, the second reason that we have this discussion is because of the religious diversity that exists in the United States right now. What you see up there on the screen is some research from the Pew Forum Research Group. It's the results of the religious landscape survey that they do every 7 years. So this is the most current data. 2014 was the last time they conducted this research. And I checked some other databases just in the last couple of months, and the data is still pretty consistent. But what we can see is, based on the results of this survey, that major world religions, we can see the breakdown percentage-wise within the United States. So Protestant and Catholic, those who identify with either of those, that's basically the Christian faith. Those are two branches of the Christian faith. We've got, in 2007, 78% of our population. That dropped to 70.6% 7 years later. In the Jewish faith, pretty much stayed the same, 1.7 to 1.9. Muslims increased somewhat from 0.4 to 0.9%. Buddhists stayed exactly the same. And Hindus increased somewhat. The other area where there was the largest change was in the group of people that do not affiliate or do not claim association or preference with any other faith. And in 2007, that group was only 16%. It increased to almost 23%. So we can see where the two biggest changes occurred. Individuals who identified themselves as Christian declined, and those who don't identify themselves with anything increased. Those are the two areas that there's probably a correlation between the two. But what this research tells us is, still, about 3/4 of the population that we will deal with identify themselves with the Christian faith. So in this part of the world, and in the United States, but in our part of the world right here, when you get into your professional practice, 3 out of 4 patients that you care for will identify themselves as Christian. And the other percentages are varied accordingly, as you can see. So that is why we will spend a good deal of time talking about the Christian faith, because that is the majority of the population that we will serve. We will see Jewish patients. We will see Muslim patients. We will see Hindus and Buddhists. We will see Wiccans. We will see atheists. We will see a variety of faith beliefs when you get into the clinical practice. But those will be more rare. We still, in this part of the world, have a strong Christian influence in people's lives. All right, so not everybody's Baptist. We got some religious diversity. The third reason this is an important discussion is for the purpose of understanding ourselves and the human condition. It helps us to understand ourselves and the human condition. That was part of the characteristics of a religion. says something about man's relationship to the unseen world. So having this discussion helps move us to how we understand ourselves in relationship to the unseen world. The fourth reason is for the purpose of understanding and communicating across culture. Because where we live, there is a heavy Christian influence. We have a Christian culture, generally speaking. I'm not saying that everybody is Christian in this part of the world. But because the Christian faith is the dominant faith, our lives, the way we are raised, the things that we do, are influenced still by the Christian faith. And so we have Christian coffee houses and Christian bookstores, and people will advertise their businesses as Christian as a way to try to promote themselves. In other parts of the world, the Middle East, you have stronger Muslim cultures where people are raised just in the culture of this is how we act and believe and behave. They may not believe and adhere to the Muslim tenets, but they're raised in a country that the major religion is Islam, so they're influenced by Islam. Same thing if you talked about Jerusalem and Israel. There's a Jewish culture, even though they may not be hardline Jews. So, religion influences how we are raised because that impacts our culture. And understanding the different religions will help us communicate with different cultures. Because religious context, number 5, is often the key to communication. I tried to illustrate that on the first day with that clip of Brother Cecil Watkins and that persona that he used when he was doing that little comedy sketch. The way he talked, the language that he used, that was a part of his religious belief, but it was also a part of that character he was playing. And that helps us understand and communicate with an individual when we know how significant religion is for them. And then the last reason, not only is religion often the key to communication, it often serves or functions as our worldview. Is that a term that's familiar to you? Anybody studied the concept of worldviews in any other class or heard conversations about it? I see a few heads nodding. So apart from the definition, the way we view the world, what is a worldview? How can we define that? Let's look at a couple of different definitions that are offered. And as we do, keep in mind that we all have a worldview. There are things in our lives that have molded and shaped the way we interpret the events and things that happen to us. And in part, that is our worldview. So from Ron Nash's book, Life's Ultimate Questions, he defines a worldview as containing a person's answers to the major questions in life, almost all of which contain significant philosophical content. He says that a worldview is a conceptual framework. I've got that highlighted because that's going to be a significant term here in just a few minutes. It's a conceptual framework, pattern, or arrangement of a person's beliefs. I think in your notes, the next question you have is, what are the 3 metaphors? Is that right? We're going to get to that in just a minute. I'll tell you when we get there. But I've got some information to give you before I get to that point. I won't forget, so just hang on with me. All right, another definition comes from Nicholas and Goebbels from an article they wrote called Worldview, System Theory, and Health Promotion. And they define a worldview as a frame of reference. That's another significant term highlighted up here for us. They say it's a frame of reference from which we perceive the world. It's the way we order and organize information about the nature of events that happen to us and happen around us. Our worldviews affect the questions we ask, the manner in which we speak, process, and organize information. And it is our worldview that affects how we interpret meaning. In part, our worldview is what will cause 4 different people to see the same accident and have 4 different interpretations of it. Because our worldview is the way that it's the pattern and organizing of our beliefs and our thoughts, and it's the way that we apply meaning to the events that we experience. So what is a worldview? We're going to do something real quick before we take our break. And I think, is the next thing on your notes the elements of a worldview? I mean, after that question about the metaphors, and then it goes to the elements, we're going to jump down and answer that question first. So what I want you to do is to take out a blank sheet of paper. Okay? So while we go through this little portion, I want to have you do an exercise with me. There are 5 elements to a worldview. They are in the form of questions. So I'm going to give those to you one at a time, and I want you to write them in your notes. But then I'm going to give you a little time to answer each one of those questions for yourself. So as we go through, you'll write the question that is the element of a worldview in your notes, and then on that separate sheet of paper, I want you to answer that question. So, number 1, the first element of a worldview is the question, what is the nature of the world? Write that in your notes. What is the nature of the world? And then, on that separate sheet of paper, put number 1, and I want you to answer the question. Write on that paper what you think the nature of the world is. In other words, how did we get here? Did we get here because a sovereign, benign being spoke and everything that came into existence at his spoken word? Or did we get here because a random collision occurred that put into effect an evolutionary process and we're the result of that process? Or did we get here because there was an alien race that came and implanted spirit babies on the earth, and that's how mankind got created? What do you think the nature of the world is? How did we get here? So write that in your notes and then answer that question. Second element of a worldview is the question, does God exist? So write that in your notes. Does God exist? And then answer the question. Now you may think it's a simple yes or no. And for most of you it may be, but there may be some who the answer is maybe, or it depends, or I don't know. Whatever your answer is, put that on your separate sheet of paper. The third element of a worldview is what is the nature of knowledge? So write that in your notes. What is the nature of knowledge? And then answer the question. And what you're really answering is the question, how do we know what we know? In philosophy, that is called the study of epistemology. Just a big word that means how do you know what you know? And there's a whole philosophical field of study that explores how individuals come to know the things that they know. So how do you know the things you know? How do we know the things we know? Does everybody have the same capacity to know things? Or are some of us born with innate abilities over others? Do we know things because we experience an enlightenment and things are revealed to us by some special knowledge? And are some people picked to receive it and some people not? Does everybody have the same right to know things, or is that limited based on other criteria? How do you know the things that you know? Number 4, what is the nature of human beings? Write that in your notes. What is the nature of human beings? And then on your separate sheet of paper, the question that you're answering is, Is man and woman, are they basically good or basically evil? Can we trust people or not? Are people basically good or basically bad? That's the question that you're answering. What is the nature of human beings? And then number 5, are there moral obligations, and if so, can they be known? Write that in your notes. That's the 5th element of a worldview. Are there moral obligations, and if so, can they be known? And then on that separate sheet of paper, answer that question. How? Well, what you're really answering is there an absolute truth? Is there a right or wrong? Or is life really much more lived in the gray? If there is right and wrong, how do we know what's right and wrong? Is it because there's a sacred book that tells us that? Or is there a divine being that is authorized to determine what is right from wrong? Is there an individual person that's been given the power and the authority to tell us what is right and what is wrong? Or does it depend on your circumstances or your situation? Are there moral obligations? Is there a right or wrong? And if there is, how can it be known? Those are the 5 elements of a worldview. So this is what I want you to do next as we move into our break for the next 10 minutes. I want to invite you to share your answers with one of your neighbors. Now, I realize this is very personal and private information, and if you don't want to, you do not have to. But sometimes the act of verbalizing what you believe helps solidify that in your mind. So I want you to just think about what is it that characterizes my worldview? The way that you answered those 5 questions. Can you put a word or a phrase on that? And if you're comfortable sharing that with one of your neighbors, I invite you to do that while we take our break. So, take 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and finish up our lecture. And where is the roll sheet, by the way? All right, let's pick back up and wrap up this discussion here about worldview. So the question before the elements asked for those metaphors, and this slide gives those to you. So the three metaphors that help us understand what our worldview is a lens, filter, or a frame of reference. Our worldview is often seen like a lens. It helps put things in focus for us and makes things clear. For those of you who wear glasses or contacts, you know what that experience is like. You get up in the morning, you don't have glasses or contacts on, everything is blurry. But as soon as you put those glasses on or put those contacts in, things clear up and you can see all the definition. That's what our worldview does for us. Yes. It also serves as a filter. The purpose of a filter is to pull out impurities, to pull out things that don't belong. That's what our worldview does. It helps take out the things that we say are not acceptable, that are not right. And also, the metaphor of a frame of reference comes out of one of those definitions from Nicholas and Goebbels. Our worldview is like a frame of reference. And what a frame does is put borders around things. So we know that this is a screen, that these are screens up here. Because we've got these borders that tell us this is where the screen ends. And everything inside of it is the screen. And our worldview does that for us. It says, these are the things that I believe in. This is the way I view the world. This is what is right. This is what is acceptable. If anything falls outside of that, it's not right and it's not acceptable. That's how our worldview functions for us, as a lens, filter, or frame of reference. Now here's where we go back to the devotional that I shared with you at the beginning of the class. Our view of spirituality, the way that we have that individual understanding of the spiritual aspect of ourselves, our being, is dependent upon our metaphysical position, meaning what we think about everything that is not part of the physical world. Our spirituality is based on how we view the metaphysical world, everything that is non-physical. And that is based on our theoretical beliefs. And it is our theoretical beliefs that impact our pragmatic or practical behavior. So just like Zig Ziglar says, what you think about affects what you believe affects what you do. That is the statement. It's made in a totally different way, but it's the same principle. Our spirituality depends on our metaphysical position because our theoretical beliefs impact our practical behavior. Let me try to illustrate that with a little clip here. So I'm going to show this and then ask you to react to it.
Heavenly Father, we thank you tonight for all your blessings. You said in all things give thanks. So we want to thank you tonight for these mighty machines that you brought before us. Thank you for the Dodges and the Toyotas. Thank you for the Fords. And most of all, we thank you for Rouse and Yates partnering to give us the power that we see before us tonight. Thank you for GM Performance Technology and the RO7 engines. Thank you for Sunoco Racing Fuel and Goodyear tires that bring performance and power to the track. Lord, I want to thank you for my smoking hot wife tonight, Lisa. My two children, Eli and Emma, or as we like to call them, the little E's. Lord, I pray and bless the drivers and use them tonight. May they put on a performance worthy of this great track. In Jesus' name, boogity, 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 amen.
So, what did you think? Is this guy for real? Is that okay? Was it funny? I mean, some of you thought it was funny. I can hear you laughing. But some of us might have thought, you know, that kind of hits me the wrong way, or I'm not quite sure about that. Some of us could have just been outright offended by it. Like he's making light of a very sensitive part of our religious beliefs. Well, in 2011, this gentleman actually did offer this prayer at a NASCAR event. His name is Joe Nelms, and he is a pastor of the Family Baptist Church in Lebanon, Tennessee. He's still there. I checked that earlier this year. So he is a real person, and he did this intentionally. When he prayed this way, it polarized the Christian community. Because people reacted either very favorably, that's great, that is awesome. He really understands his audience, he understands the